What if the only one who understood your silence was someone who's never been heard either? At school, Miguel was just another boy too quiet to be noticed. Severe autism, they said. Trauma, they added. But no one really knew what lay behind that distant gaze or those trembling hands that carefully stacked dry leaves. He didn't speak, didn't touch, didn't allow anyone to touch him. And in that wordless world, everything heard quietly. Across town, a dog with a reputation for aggression was being dismissed as uncontrollable. Thor, a former police K9, trained to obey, to bite, to protect. But now, without a mission, without a partner, without a purpose, he, too, had been left in the shadows. Reactive, they said. Dangerous. But no one saw the sorrow behind those dark, tired eyes. This is the story of two broken beings, a boy and a dog, both labeled as difficult by the world. But what happened when they met, no one expected. Because sometimes, what the world calls a flaw is, in truth, the beginning of healing. If you believe love can grow in the most unlikely places, stay with this story. It might just change the way you see empathy, fear, and hope. The hallway of the special education school was quiet, except for the rhythmic sound of shoelaces tapping against the floor with every step. Miguel, 7, eyes always down, never responded when his name was called. No one really knew what was going on in his mind, but they all knew what was missing around him: friends, words, hugs. Since his severe autism diagnosis and the sudden loss of his older brother, he seemed to have disconnected from the world, as if living in a place no one could reach. While the other children drew pictures or played outside, Miguel always chose the same corner, next to the wooden fence. There, he stacked dry leaves with near-hypnotic precision. Sometimes his fingers trembled, as if sensing something invisible. The teacher tried to approach, a sliced apple, a box of blocks, but Miguel would recoil, his shoulders tight, his gaze distant. His silence wasn't empty, it was a scream the world didn't know how to hear. That afternoon, something changed. When the principal mentioned a special visitor, no one imagined it would be for Miguel. But for some reason, when he heard retired police dog, he looked up, just for a second. It was brief, a blink, but in that instant, something like curiosity flickered in his eyes. As if, maybe, just maybe, this animal might see him. And that was the beginning. His name was Thor, a powerful name for an animal who now flinched at even the softest touch. His black coat still gleamed, but his eyes told a different story. Since being retired from the K9 unit due to unpredictable behavior, he'd lived between shelters and frustrated handlers. They said he was dangerous, hard to control. But no one spoke of the day he lost his partner. Of the smoke he smelled. Of the bang that still echoed inside him. Upon arrival at the school, people instinctively stepped back. He didn't bark, didn't growl, just stood still, observing, like someone who's waited too long to trust again. The handler held the leash tightly, but Thor didn't pull. He simply breathed heavily, as if the air around him weighed double. He walked past the children like a slow shadow. And even with all the noise, his eyes scanned the yard, until they landed on a corner. A boy, kneeling. Silent. Surrounded by leaves. It lasted just a moment. But in that instant, Thor stiffened. Not in fear, in recognition. As if the boy's quiet pain felt familiar. He took one step. Small. Almost imperceptible. But it was the first step toward something he didn't yet know he was searching for. The sun was beginning to set when Thor stopped 3 steps away from Miguel. The boy didn't move. He kept stacking leaves, one by one, as if time didn't exist there. But his breathing had changed, shorter, shallower. His fingers still trembled, but with less rhythm. Thor didn't know what to do. Trained to chase, to bite, to obey, but not to wait. And yet, he waited. It was Miguel who broke the space between them. Not with words, those still slept inside him, but with a fragile gesture. He let a leaf fall from the top of the pile. And pushed it gently toward the dog. Almost an invitation. Thor lowered his head slowly. He didn't bark. Didn't sniff. He just touched the leaf with his nose, like someone acknowledging a secret. Their eyes were locked, not in alarm, but in discovery. The teacher, the handler, the adults all held their breath. It was the first time Miguel had initiated contact with anyone. And that anyone had been a dog everyone labeled as uncontrollable. In that absolute silence, 2 beings marked by rejection recognized each other, and didn't pull away. The yard was almost empty when a ball slipped from a child's hands and slammed against the metal gate. The noise cut through the quiet like thunder. Thor tensed immediately, rigid body, lowered ears, a short growl escaping before he could stop it. Miguel, still holding another leaf, froze. His shoulders rose, his fingers clenched. For a second, it felt like the invisible thread between them would snap. The teacher took a hesitant step forward. But she didn't need to. Thor didn't lunge. Didn't bark. He just looked at Miguel, almost as if apologizing for an old reflex, for a past still alive inside him. Miguel, on his part, didn't run. His eyes wide, yes. But he stayed. The boy who avoided touch, who couldn't bear loud noises, stayed. It was he who reached out, trembling, afraid, but willing. His fingers touched Thor's muzzle. And Thor closed his eyes. It wasn't obedience. It was a pact. As if both were saying, I'm afraid too, but I won't leave you. The handler slowly let go of the leash. And no one dared interrupt what had just begun. The next morning, Miguel arrived earlier than usual. For the first time, unprompted. He walked straight to the same corner of the yard, where the leaves no longer waited in stacks. Thor was there. No leash. No command. As if he just knew. Miguel sat down slowly, crossed his legs, and began drawing invisible lines in the dirt with a stick. Thor lay beside him, head resting nearby, eyes half closed. No words, but something deeper was speaking. Gradually, Miguel began to hum. Not full words. Not names. Short, broken sounds, like a quiet tune only he could hear. Thor flicked one ear now and then, listening. Then lowered his nose to follow the boy's drawn lines. It was a silent dance between two souls who had learned to exist on the edge, and who now created a space where there was no judgment, only presence. In the back room, the principal watched through the window, eyes full of tears. We've never seen him like this, she whispered. But no one dared interrupt. Because in that dirt, between crooked lines and closed eyes, something was being rebuilt, trust, forgotten language, and the peace of simply being. In the days that followed, Thor became more than just a visitor. When Miguel arrived, he was already there, lying by the gate as if guarding that small piece of the world just for him. The school noises, the stares from other kids, none of it seemed to bother Miguel anymore. He still didn't talk much. Still didn't play with others. But he walked steadier now, less hesitant. And always at his side, that dog who once scared everyone. The handler mentioned Thor no longer followed commands like before. Sat when he wanted. Lay down at odd moments. But no one saw it as disobedience. It was as if he had realized his new mission wasn't to follow orders, but to listen to the unsaid. To protect, not with teeth, but with presence. He sensed Miguel's fears before they surfaced. Sometimes, he'd simply lean against him, a light, firm touch, as if saying, I'm here. One afternoon, Miguel touched the black vest Thor wore and said, for the first time, you don't need this anymore. For words, spoken with effort, but clear. And no one, not even the handler, could hold back the emotion. Because in that moment, it became obvious, Thor hadn't been retired. He'd been found. At the end of semester event, the school hosted a small presentation for families. Miguel wasn't on stage, nor among those singing or reciting. But he showed up, holding a poster and walking beside Thor, without a leash, as if the dog were part of him. On the paper were colorful scribbles and, in the center, two simple drawings, a boy with big eyes and a dog with a heart on its chest. Below, in wobbly letters, my best friend. There was a different kind of silence then. Not awkward, reverent. Parents, teachers, even the other children, all seemed to understand, no explanation needed. Miguel still spoke little. But now he smiled more, that shy, half-mouth smile that appears when the soul finally exhales. Thor followed his every step like a living shadow. No longer reacting to loud sounds or sudden moves. As if, in healing Miguel, he had healed too. After the event, Miguel sat on the floor, as always. Thor lay beside him and rested his head in his lap. Neither said a word, and nothing needed to be said. Because sometimes, when two souls recognize each other, silence stops being emptiness. And becomes peace. Miguel still speaks little. Thor no longer wears a vest. But together, they say everything the world needs to hear, that there are ways to love that don't need words, and sometimes, healing begins with a single shared gaze. How many around us carry invisible wounds like theirs? How many souls are quietly waiting to be seen, beneath labels, fear, and noise? This isn't just a story about an autistic boy and a retired police dog. It's about all of us, about what happens when we choose to see with empathy, when we offer presence instead of pressure, when we give second chances, even without full understanding. If this story touched your heart, share it. Because maybe, right now, someone out there needs to believe the impossible is just the beginning.